till death do us part. She always found that phrase very romantic, the most romantic part of the wedding vows. She had told him that, and he had laughed. "That's a big promise to make," he had said, grinning in his usual adorable way. But she had said, however big, she would keep that promise. "So what's your promise to me then?" she asked him. "I will always keep you happy," he said. And she was happy, with him, with his promise, with their life. There was nothing more she could wish for. He was a good person, warm, funny, understanding, romantic even. He was not obvious with his affection. He was skeptic about displaying his love for the world to see. "That's when you know it's forced," he would say. He was always subtle, but she could feel it. It made her feel even more special. Their love was their own, and there was no need for anyone else to know it or understand it as long as they did. And she did. Of course, they had their arguments and fights, but then who doesn't? It was a perfect match in its own not so perfect way. And so, she was happy, just as he had promised. But then, things began to change. Not in the most obvious ways, but in ways only she could tell. It would be an unanswered phone call, or a cancelled dinner plan, a longer than usual strand of hair on his shirt, the whiff of another woman's perfume. She was disturbed, but she chose to ignore it. No, he wouldn't do anything to make her unhappy, she thought. And then one day, he got her flowers. And that one act did what none of the others could. She knew he hated obvious display of so-called affection. He himself had called them fake more than once. And yet, here he was, standing outside the door after a long day at work, with a bunch of roses in his hands instead of the usual scowl on his face. In the regular world, it would have been sweet. In their world, it was just plain weird. She knew things had gone wrong way beyond her imagination. But she didn't believe in conflicts and confrontations. She knew they would turn ugly. She believed in the age-old concept of letting go what was no longer yours. And this seemed like the perfect setup to put her belief in action. That night, she lovingly set the table for two, gently poured red wine into tall glasses. The aroma of candles lit up the room. She cooked his favorite dishes and baked his favorite desserts. She looked her best and sat there at the table, looking forlorn, with just the ticking clock for company. And she reminisced all the good times she had had with her husband. How the first time she had met him, his unkempt hair had made her laugh. How the time that he got down on one knee and asked her to be his. "Don't think about all that," she told herself. She called him. He said he was busy, buried under a pile of work. He would be late. She called the office. They said he left 3 hours ago. She smiled. She smiled and she sighed as she hung up. After a while, she heard the doorbell. There he was, looking dapper, shine in his eyes, no apology for being late. She led him to the table, and after a scrumptious meal followed by endless rounds of sparkling wine, she knew it wouldn't hurt as much. As she looked at him walking into the bedroom, she turned her gaze to the knife on the table. It glistened in the light, beckoning her. She held the cold blade in her hand and walked towards him, hoping like hell to change her mind. But before she could, she ended it in one fluid stroke. As he bled to death on his side of the bed, she felt a twinge. She was unhappy. He had been unable to keep his promise to her. But then, at least she had kept hers. Till death do us part, she had said. Mr. Toastmaster.